Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Tanner starts telling his story from the moment that should have been unforgettable for all the right reasons, the wedding. The ceremony was beautiful, everything they had planned months in advance. The photos, the smiles, the vows, everything seemed perfect. After the reception, they went straight to a resort they had booked ahead of time. 3 days alone together, as husband and wife, to relax and enjoy their honeymoon. Tanner was excited, hoping it would be a time of connection. But when they got to the room, Vanessa took off her dress, put on some casual clothes, and simply said she was exhausted. She turned around and fell asleep. He stayed there, lying next to her, staring at the ceiling. He tried not to think much of it. He thought maybe everything would get better the next day. On the second day, he suggested activities, tried to create a romantic mood. She agreed to go down for breakfast but barely spoke. She spent the whole time on her phone. In the afternoon, she preferred to stay in the room, saying she didn't want to go out in the sun. Tanner went on the boat tour alone. He came back frustrated. That night, he did something different, bought wine, played soft music in the background, tried to make the atmosphere more intimate. Vanessa walked in, complimented the music, but then started taking off her makeup, saying she had a headache. He tried to touch her, give her a longer kiss. She gently pulled away, saying she loved him, but just needed time. Again, she lay down, turning her face to the opposite side. On the last day, Tanner woke up early. He stayed still, staring at the ceiling of the room. The silence in the relationship felt heavier than any word spoken. When they returned home, he carried a weight he could barely describe. Vanessa, on the other hand, talked about the following week like nothing was wrong. She mentioned work deadlines, meetings, how they would need to organize the couple's finances. Tanner just listened, trying to understand where the mistake was. That same night, he sent a message to Derek. He was his childhood friend, one of those who had gone through decades together. He needed to talk to someone. They met at a downtown cafe. Tanner arrived first, already with a full head. When Derek showed up, he greeted him with a restrained smile. They chatted briefly about small talk, laughed about memories from adolescence, but soon Tanner got straight to the point. He said something strange was happening with Vanessa. He told him about the trip, the constant refusals of intimacy, the coldness in her gestures. He said she didn't seem invested in the marriage. Derek listened, nodding slightly. Then he responded with something that sounded almost rehearsed. Dude, sometimes it's just stress, women go through phases like this. Maybe she's adjusting, you know? Some women change after getting married. Tanner frowned. The words didn't fit the image he had of Vanessa. And even more, the way Derek responded seemed odd. There were no questions, no real concern. It was like he was trying to end the conversation quickly. Tanner swallowed hard. Changed the subject. But inside him, something stayed lit. He knew Derek too well not to notice the hidden discomfort. And it was right there, during that conversation with his best friend, that a silent doubt began to grow, even if he wasn't ready to admit it yet. Tanner went home after that talk with Derek feeling more suspicious than before. He tried to ignore it, tried to follow the advice he heard, but it was hard when everything inside him screamed otherwise. It wasn't just Vanessa's behavior that bothered him, but also the lack of effort on her part to make the marriage work. He had brought up conversations more than once, tried to be kind and patient, suggested doing things together, dinners, walks, movie nights, but her response was always shallow. It was like she was only playing the role of a wife without really caring about the script. Over time, the signs became clearer. Vanessa started coming home late more often. She always gave the same excuses: extended meetings, traffic issues, last-minute projects. Sometimes she wouldn't even come inside, staying in the car outside, on her phone. He noticed twice in a row, and once he decided to go out to the porch to try to figure out what she was doing. When Vanessa noticed him, she quickly put her phone away and came in saying she was finishing a work call. Tanner didn't push. He just watched. And the more he watched, the more cracks he found in that marriage. She started paying too much attention to his company. It wasn't genuine curiosity. It was like she was trying to understand where the sensitive spots were. She began asking questions about profits, who handled accounting, how contracts were divided. She said she wanted to learn, that she wanted to help. Tanner found it strange. Before they got married, she never showed interest in what he did. And now, when they barely exchanged affection, she wanted to know details about financial transactions? He didn't know what to think, but it kept bothering him. One day, he came home earlier and found Vanessa locked in the guest room with her laptop open and her phone on speaker. She was speaking quietly, but seemed nervous. When he knocked on the door, she immediately hung up. She said she was in a remote meeting and it was a confidential project. Tanner didn't know where to start questioning. Everything always seemed out of reach for him. Vanessa always had a ready excuse, always with a neutral smile on her face and a tone of voice that stopped any argument. But that kind of emotional control, to him, hurt the most. Because it showed she wasn't confused or lost, like he was, she knew exactly what she was doing. From that point on, he decided to watch even more closely. He started noting small details, dates, times, expressions. When she said she was in a meeting, he checked the times on the company's online calendar. Sometimes it matched, but other times there was no record at all. On one specific occasion, she said she would need to sleep at a friend's house because of an event out of town. Tanner found it strange, but agreed. However, that night she sent a message saying she had no signal and would talk to him the next morning. That sounded so forced he couldn't sleep. The next morning, he found a printed sheet on the counter. It was a simulation of transferring shares of the company. Vanessa had left it by accident. It was scribbled, with notes and calculations. It was like she was trying to figure out how the asset division would look in case of separation. That shook Tanner completely. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. A certainty was starting to form. And now, for the first time, he felt like he might be being used. Not by accident, not out of indifference, but as part of a plan. Days later, Vanessa talked about a new job offer and asked if he could send some company data to a supposed financial consultant. She said it was just for an investment simulation. He smiled and said he would think about it. And as he left, he turned on the car without turning on the radio, without thinking about anything except a decision beginning to take shape inside him. Either he uncovered the whole truth, or he would keep living alongside someone who might never have been truly there. Tanner spent the following days in a state of alertness. He woke up before the alarm, pretended to sleep when Vanessa got up, avoided direct confrontations because he knew any premature accusation would only strengthen her game. He needed proof. He needed something that would make her stop pretending and force her to show who she really was. Her gestures were becoming sharper, as if she were playing chess with him and was always 3 moves ahead. She started suggesting business decisions with suspicious interest, always positioning herself as if she were a partner and not just his wife. That's when he hired Miles Carter, an experienced private investigator recommended by an old client. He didn't give many details at first. He just said he needed total discretion and concrete results. He gave Miles the number Vanessa used most often, places she usually visited, and a list of recent appointments she had mentioned. Meanwhile, he pretended everything was normal at home. He smiled when she smiled, talked when she started a conversation, followed the script she seemed to have written since the beginning of the marriage. It was strange seeing his own life as a theater. And even stranger being the only person on stage who knew it was all fake. Miles started sending reports after 4 days. First, records of calls, unusual movements, and even quick stops in empty parking lots. But what broke Tanner was the photo sent on the 6th day, Vanessa, sitting at a restaurant table, holding Derek's hand. Both smiling, talking closely, like they shared an old intimacy. Tanner held his phone in his hand for minutes, motionless. It wasn't doubt anymore. It was confirmation. Derek, his best friend. The same one who had listened to his complaints. The same one who said Vanessa might just be going through a phase. The same one who avoided eye contact when hearing about the distance in the marriage. Tanner remembered everything at once, the conversation at the cafe, Derek's restrained expression, the quick responses, the eagerness to change the subject. Now he understood. He knew. He had been involved from the beginning. From that point on, Tanner changed his plan. He didn't just want to get rid of the lie. He wanted to leave clean, with evidence, legal backing, leaving no room for manipulation. He sought out Angela Monroe, a trusted lawyer who had represented him in commercial disputes before. He told her everything. From the resort trip to the detective's report. Angela listened silently. At the end, she said he was dealing with two kinds of betrayal, emotional and financial. And both could be used to dissolve the marriage while fully protecting his assets. In the following days, Tanner and Angela started preparing the process. It was delicate, required precision. She advised him to keep acting as if he didn't know anything until all the documents were ready. Tanner followed the advice. He went back to work as if life were peaceful. He passed by Vanessa in the hallway at home as if he still believed every word she said. Sometimes, she hugged him and said they were entering a good phase. He responded with a smile and a kiss on the top of her head, like he still believed what he heard. One afternoon, she came home excited from work saying she had gotten an important contact in the tech sector. An investor interested in partnerships with companies like Tanner's. She said it would be interesting if he accepted at least a meeting. She spoke like she wanted to help. He pretended surprise, thanked her concern, and said he would consider it. But inside, it was clear, it was another attempt to sneak into a space she no longer had. It was a desperate move before the end. When Angela finished preparing all the documentation, Tanner asked her to accompany him personally to deliver it. Vanessa was at home, sitting at the kitchen table, with her laptop open. Tanner called her name. She smiled and said she was solving something related to work. He pulled up a chair, sat down, and handed her the envelope. He simply said, "Read it carefully. It's all in there." She found the tone strange, opened the envelope, and upon seeing the content, went silent. Angela stood beside her, firm. Vanessa started mumbling excuses, said it was a mistake, that he was rushing. But seeing the photos stopped her. The images of her with Derek, the bank records, the transcribed messages. Her face changed. The words stopped coming. She stood up, threw the papers on the table, and tried to flip the situation. She said he was cold, that maybe she had felt lonely, that he never noticed her pain. Tanner listened to everything. Waited for her to finish. Then he slowly stood up, looked at her for a few seconds, and said firmly, "You chose to destroy what we had. Now you'll have to deal with what's left. You have until the end of the day to pack your things and leave. This house is mine. And from today on, you don't live here anymore." Vanessa widened her eyes. The expression of someone who hadn't expected to hear that. She opened her mouth, but Tanner cut in, "No drama. No excuses. Angela will stay here until you're done packing. And if you pass the deadline, I'll call the police." He then turned and walked to the living room. He sat on the couch, crossed his arms, and remained silent. Angela stood, firm, watching everything closely. Vanessa had no reaction. She stayed still for a few moments, then turned around and started collecting her things slowly, as if dragging not just suitcases, but the consequence of every choice made over the past months. It took almost 3 hours. She grabbed clothes, accessories, some documents, and her phone charger. She tried to start a conversation twice, but Angela shut it down with a simple look. Tanner stayed in the same spot, staring fixedly at the wall ahead, as if each minute was another brick in the wall separating his past from what would come next. Vanessa left the house with her bags and her head down. She didn't look back. Angela locked the gate and went back inside. She confirmed with Tanner that everything was in order, that she only took what belonged to her, and warned that she would handle the process in the upcoming days. He nodded briefly in thanks. As soon as she left, he locked the door and stood in the living room, still, with his entire body tense. The silence at that moment felt heavy. No voice, no movement, just his deep breathing. Inside, emotions built up, but none found space to escape. No scream, no tears, no anger. Just exhaustion. In the days that followed, Vanessa tried to react. She posted vague messages on social media, the kind that hint without naming anyone. She acted like a victim, talked about invisible pains, abandonment, emotional betrayal, fragile relationships. It was subtle enough to seem like a wounded woman, but direct enough for everyone to understand who she was referring to. Tanner received messages from acquaintances, asking if everything was okay, if it was about him. Most people didn't know anything. He maintained his posture, avoided public explanations. Angela advised him not to engage in that game. She said the more he stayed silent, the more she would sink in her own contradictions. Vanessa went further. In a short video published at a strategic moment, she let slip details that shouldn't have been there. She said she was discarded after years of dedication. That she suffered from the coldness of a calculating man. That she lost everything overnight. Some people believed her. Others began to wonder what was behind that narrative. But when one of the images captured by investigator Miles leaked, everything exploded. It was a clear photo, no room for doubt, Vanessa and Derek together at a restaurant, smiling, her hand on his arm. The image spread across groups, reaching co-workers, family friends, and mutual acquaintances of the couple. The reaction was immediate. People who previously defended her started distancing themselves. Comments appeared questioning her version. Some asked about Derek, others claimed to have noticed something strange long before the breakup. She tried to erase traces, delete posts, deactivate profiles, but the damage was already done. A mutual friend, who knew both Tanner and Derek, published a long post defending Tanner, revealing that Vanessa had always had ambiguous behavior since the beginning of the relationship. That served as fuel for an avalanche of exposure. Meanwhile, Derek faced professional collapse. After the scandal, he was called in by his company's management. The legal department had received anonymous accusations about conflicts of interest and unethical conduct. His connection to Vanessa, combined with access he gained to Tanner's documents through her, was enough to place him under investigation. In less than 2 weeks, he was fired for misconduct. He tried to justify himself, claiming he was the target of personal persecution, but the facts were too strong to support any alternative version. Without a job and with his reputation damaged, Derek contacted Tanner via email. He wrote a long text apologizing. He said he got involved without thinking, that he never meant to hurt anyone, that he was going through a confusing period. He said he envied the life Tanner had, that he felt small compared to him, and that all of that led him to make bad decisions. Tanner read everything. Read calmly, until the end. Then he closed the email and left it in the trash. He didn't respond. This silence was his new choice. For the first time in a long time, he felt control over his own life. He didn't need to justify or prove anything. The masks had fallen. And those who judged him for being discreet now saw who truly acted with dignity. Tanner returned his focus to the company. He restructured teams, cut old connections, including service providers linked to Derek. It was a phase of cleaning, inside and out. Slowly, he regained what he had lost: focus, clarity, direction. One night, while opening a drawer, he found the wedding album. It was stored with old papers. He thought for a few seconds whether he should throw it away. He looked at the photos. There they were, smiling, hugging, surrounded by flowers. It was strange looking at those images now. They looked like scenes from an old movie. A movie where he believed he was living a love story, while the other character was only following a script to get where she wanted. He closed the album, but didn't throw it away. He put it back. Not because he wanted to remember, but because it represented what he survived. And surviving was also winning. The next morning, he woke up lighter. The pain was still there, but it had changed shape. It no longer paralyzed him. It was more like a reminder of everything he had overcome. He got up, made his own coffee, organized his day. He had a lot of work ahead, but now with one certainty, the truth, sooner or later, always finds its way. And this time, it came with enough strength to put everything in the right place. Months passed before the divorce process was officially completed. With Angela's support, who spared no effort, Tanner obtained the full dissolution of the union under specific clauses of asset protection and civil liability. The final petition was registered based on dissolution due to marital bad faith, proven infidelity, and attempted improper appropriation of business assets, supported by documentary, testimonial, and digital records legally obtained. Vanessa signed without the option to contest, after realizing there were no loopholes for negotiation. The final agreement established that she would leave the marriage without any rights over the company's assets, no alimony, and with an indefinite non-approach clause regarding business relations. But the story didn't end with the divorce. Based on the evidence collected by investigator Miles and Derek's involvement in attempts to access and improperly influence internal company documents belonging to Tanner, Angela initiated an independent legal process for corporate fraud. The use of privileged information with the intent to manipulate or gain unfair financial advantage constitutes a direct violation of commercial laws, especially when there's deliberate intent to destabilize or transfer resources through unauthorized means. The case was formally filed in state court, under the terms of conspiracy to commit financial fraud and breach of fiduciary trust, which, in simple language, means that Vanessa and Derek acted together to deceive Tanner, using the marriage as a cover to achieve economic goals. The prosecution accepted the case and within a few months, both were charged. Vanessa claimed ignorance of the seriousness of her actions, tried to shift responsibility onto Derek, but the exchanged messages between them, the records of meetings, and the handwritten documents worked against her. Derek, pressured by the imminence of a criminal sentence, accepted a plea deal with the prosecution. To avoid jail time, he admitted involvement in the scheme, took responsibility for part of the actions, and was sentenced to pay a fine of $250,000, along with a 5-year ban from holding administrative positions. Vanessa, on the other hand, was convicted in civil court to pay compensation for marital bad faith and financial collusion, totaling $80,000, a sum she didn't even possess, forcing her to sell personal belongings and request loans to fulfill the sentence. Both completely lost what little image and reputation they had left. In the end, Tanner didn't need to raise his voice or seek revenge through words or scandals. He let the truth, backed by justice, speak for him. His name was cleared, his company remained intact, and his peace, finally reclaimed through every silence he chose to maintain. The pain stayed in the past, and the weight of betrayal transformed into a lesson learned. Vanessa and Derek continued on their paths, marked by the consequences of every decision they made. And Tanner, finally, could continue on his, with dignity, truth, and an entire future ahead. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.